If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe, follow, and rate on your preferred podcast platforms. If you'd like to reach out to me, simply connect to me on Twitter. Links in the description.
Sometimes we rationalize too much, and we plan and we brainstorm. And brainstorm, the beauty of brainstorming is that it gives you delayed gratification. I mean, gives you instant gratification. You can think, you and I can right now talk about how to solve the garbage problem of the city, and after 1 hour the problem will not be solved, but both of us will feel very, very good. To solve local problems, you have to come out, you have to get your hands dirty.
This is Kuldeep Dantewadia. He is the co founder of ReBenefit, an organization that focuses on empowering youth to combat civic and environmental issues while equipping them with 21st century skill sets. They continue to create impactful, sustainable solutions and strengthen the civic muscle of India. He believes in the ideas and energy of young people, which I think is truly contagious. He and his team are actively working towards bridging the gap between third tier governance bodies and citizens with the help of their community of Solve Ninjas. Community work and bottom up solutions inspire me, and I believe small actions can bring about big change. In this episode, we talk about civic issues, community work, and entrepreneurship. Here's my conversation with Kuldeep Dantewadia. One thing we both have in common is the love for our city, Bangalore. From the morning fog to relatively cool summers, greenery, food, and the people all made growing up in Bangalore beautiful and full of great memories. What was it like for you to grow up in Bangalore? And when did you start realizing or noticing change and the need to act on it?
Right. I think that's a great opening conversation starter, Nitin. So just to give you some context, I mean to say, I'm what people would call as a migrant in the city, but I don't consider that way. My grandfather moved from Rajasthan to Andhra Pradesh, and he worked in Andhra Pradesh for the longest time. His children, that is, my father was born in Guntur, and my father during the summer holidays would come to Bangalore, and he would tell me when I was young that, when he would come to Bangalore as a child, as a young boy, he would just find the city amazing. He would narrate stories that, hey, I was used to walk there, and I slept under that tree, or this road was deserted, or the trees were big and things like this. And my father, I think, fell in love with the city. And I remember him telling me once when I was young that my only aim in life was to move to Bangalore and, make ends meet. So my dad moved from Guntur to Bangalore, one for better education, but also, just because he loved the city. So as a young boy in a middle class family, um, I would hear this romance around the city, around the trees, around this is how the city was, that is how the city was. For me, growing up, Nitin, this is the greatest city in the world. Like just the people of this city, so giving. I mean to say, now people say outsider, insider, but I never felt like an outsider. Such humble, such simple people. I don't have to talk about the weather of the city, but I think as a young boy, there was certain humility this city had. People say simple living, high thinking, and almost every Bangalorean I met, I interacted with, be it in my school, be it my neighbors, be it the people I played with. Like all of them exhibited that simple living, high thinking, and then the role models from the city also became like that. You hear about Rahul Dravid and Anil Kumble, Javagal Srinath, and they're also simple living, high thinking. You hear about Narayan Murthy, Azim Premji when you are young. Again, exactly simple living, high thinking. You hear about I mean to say. musicians from the city. So I guess it was just like I was born to be made. Like when I was born, I was told so many stories, so I had to fall in love. And then back then, I mean to say, now this will just show how old I have become. But you just had Kaban Park, Lal Bagh, and Vidhan Sauda. So that was the city for you. And growing up, my love for the city just increased. So my favorite cricketer had to be Rahul Dravid. My favorite actress had to be Deepika Padukone, because my loyalty belonged to Bangalore. And then obviously so much trivia about the city. One of the first cities in the world, the third city in the world to actually get electricity. Um, how Indian Institute of Science was formed, why Texas Instruments came to Bangalore. So then I became like a Bangalore nerd, and wanting to know everything about the city. But yeah, that's I mean to say, for me, the city of Bangalore. And for me, it kind of embodies my childhood, my learnings, my value system, which I think the city gave and the people of this city gave. So yes, yeah. And of course, I mean to say, the food, I mean to say, huge, today's world idli day, I think. I saw that on Twitter. And I mean to say, I can get into heated arguments of which idli or dosa is the best in the city and why, and get into all levels of detail. So yeah, I can go on and on about the city of Bangalore, but I think I've gotten a lot from the city. To answer your second part of the question, I mean to say, the first time I sensed change, Nitin, was, I think, the late 90s, early 2000, like this whole IT boom. Obviously, as a citizen of the city, very very proud. But one could start sensing, the city change. Suddenly, I started seeing cafes pop up. I remember seeing a mall for the first time, sometime I think in 2004, 2005. So clearly, a new city was emerging. I started traveling to parts of cities which now seem very don't seem that far, but back then it seemed like, oh my God, that's another city altogether. Indranagar or Koramangala and places like that. So I think I saw the first wave of change around late 90s, early 2000s. You could see a garbage patch here or there. You could see a certain amount of space increasing in the city. But I think from the 2000s, almost every year, the pace of change is just phenomenal. I mean to say, I'm sure the city has given a lot of rewards to people, I think, economically, socially. But one could see a lot of change, just be the number of vehicles, the trees being cut, the pace of the city changing, the cultural fiber, kind of being siloed in a few places in the city, garbage spots increasingly hearing about water issues. So the list can go on and on. But yeah, I like to answer specifically, the late 2000s is when, early 2000 is when I started as a young person sensing change in the city.
Yeah, I completely agree with the first part where you talk about role models and the people. I think indirectly, I I personally learned a lot of values, empathy and being kind, and that too indirectly. Nobody really tells you this, but when somebody treats you that way, you indirectly learn it. So, yeah, I completely agree with that. And the second part where you talk about the whole software expansion and IT industry, I live in a part where I think I saw a big change in that,
Mm.
where there were hardly any houses around, and today there are so many houses and malls and
Right,
everything around it. It's quite rapid change.
right,
Yeah, that's true.
right,
Uh, so this other idea that that I commonly hear is, it's not our problem, but it's the duty of the government, and
right,
this still presses. Of course, there is some truth to it, but it shouldn't
right,
stop us from trying to advocate and work on change, and
right,
specifically from the bottom up, uh,
right,
because either way, we are the ones who are affected. Uh,
right,
so, since you've spent several years in this space and interacted with
right.
people from different backgrounds, why do you think this idea still exists? And how
Right.
difficult is it to solve? the social and psychological issue?
I don't know. I don't know, Nitin. This is a very profound and a meta question to answer. But I definitely, I mean to say, an elected government is supposed to fulfill their duty and their services to citizens. I mean, in an ideal world, yes, that should be the case. But but a few ways of looking at this, right? One, what is government? Government is nothing but a reflection of the citizens. I have always believed that the government is reflecting the citizens and the citizens are reflecting the government. You might want to run away from it, you might want to disagree with it, but that's the reality according to me. And the governments by nature are not, or have over the years, over the decades, according to me, have learned the art of being reactive and not proactive. So a government will only react when it feels that there is a significant proportion of people who are wanting for that. I mean to say, let me give you an example, and I'm making an assumption here. You might find an elected representative in private believing that LGBTQ rights are important and people should not be discriminated on the basis of their orientation. But very rarely will that elected representative make a public statement, because in a way, deep down, they know very instinctively that their constituency might not agree with that view, and therefore they don't want to make that statement. So long story short, the point I'm trying to make is elected representatives reflect us and we reflect the elected representatives. So if you're not happy with the government, then you have a role to play, and if you're very happy with the government, also you have a role to play. The second thing, Nitin, is I don't think this was the case always. My understanding, I might be wrong, but post independence, at least for the first 20, 25, 30 years, or at least for the first 2 decades, there was a sense of community. People believed that this was their country. They had a need to make it better. But I think over the years, we have forgotten that we are citizens, and we have started thinking we are consumers. We think we are consumers and the government is nothing but a service delivery agent, like Flipkart or an Amazon or a Swiggy or a Zomato or a Dunzo, which I think is a very dangerous mindset. And the final thing is the reality, right? Like look at our country, look at our country, even at the lowest level of our governance, which is according to me the most important: a corporator, councillor, municipality. First of all, municipalities are understaffed. Second, most of them don't have the skill set. Third, they are overworked. Because they're understaffed, they're overworked, right? And there's so much population explosion. So in a country like ours, I mean to say, it is a very simplistic statement to make that, oh, it's the government's duty to deliver. It is humanly not possible. I mean to say, I believed in that. I believe that yes, the government should deliver, but it is humanly not possible if citizens don't play a role. I mean, and India is a very unique country, and therefore, whether we like it or not, whether we believe it or not, whether we think it's right or not, keeping all that aside, it is absolutely important for citizens to play a role and participate in everyday functioning of your neighborhood, of your city, of your country, however you want to look at it. So my limited point here is, Nitin, here is there is no escaping. Citizens will have to play a role, and just look at COVID, right? Like the number of citizens which came out, civil society organizations which came out, they played such an important bridging role between the government and the citizens, and we need more and more of that, or else it's going to be impossible. I mean, our country is a very unique country, and if you centralize everything in our country and expect the government to deliver everything, we'll just become more and more fragile. And if there is something we have learned during COVID, is when systems become fragile, they break. And therefore, when citizens play a role, in a way we make the system a little anti-fragile, and that adds a little bit of robustness to absorb the shocks which come in our society. So yeah, there is no escaping. Whether you like it or not, you will have to play a more proactive role. And top down is not the answer, and COVID probably has made us realize that. So bottom up is also something we should look into. Sorry if my answers are long and winding.
No, no. This I really enjoy long form conversations, so don't worry about that. Yeah, but I completely agree. I think it's quite difficult to manage such a large group of people, especially if there is issues with communication from the bottom up. Uh, and I feel personally that most people use that as an excuse. That it's the duty of the government, because it's easy to blame another party or another person. So I feel it's more of an excuse and rather than a mindset. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah. Uh, so moving on, I think the biggest change that I've noticed is the waste management in Bangalore and how it's being handled. Uh, there are
Hmm.
great initiatives both from NGOs and from the government. Uh,
Hmm.
and I think at an individual level, this the 3 R's is quite simple and easy way to
Hmm.
contribute to many issues that we face today.
Hmm.
Uh, but can you talk about some other civic and environmental issues that you think might need immediate attention, both from the public and the government?
So, so Nitin, I want to be careful here. Um, Sometimes people like me, when we say that there are certain civic issues or environment issues, we represent a certain English speaking crowds living in a certain locality of the city, and there is a tendency to overgeneralize and say that the entire city needs that. So whatever I am saying has to be taken with a pinch of salt. And there cannot be like one single issue. Like there are so many things, and all are burning issues, depends from what lens you see. Number one is urban mobility. There is a lot of discussion happening right now around the local bus transportation system of the city, and I think that is a very very important discussion. Yes, there is an environmental angle, reducing automobiles on the ground, reducing vehicular pollution, reducing traffic congestion. But all that is important, but urban mobility is absolutely important for people from underserved communities. I mean, they cannot do an Uber or an Ola, and for them having public transport which is at extremely nominal rates is important for them to become mobile, because that not only will increase their opportunities for income, it will not only increase their income opportunities, but will also give them a better quality of life. That is one important point, urban mobility. The second uh, is definitely, like you mentioned, solid waste management. There's a great civil society participation, the solid waste management roundtable. There are lots of organizations working in this space. There are a lot of private players who have come in this space, and that's amazing. This summer is going to be interesting. There are pockets in the city where underserved people live. People from low incomes live, where there is going to be a lot of water scarcity. And again, water is a very, very important uh, utility to have for people. You right. So that is one. Sanitation conditions in government schools have been pathetic. Recently, the government has sanctioned about 100 crores for improving the sanitation systems in government schools. So these are, according to me, the top three things. And then there are interlinkages, Nitin. More what do you say, vehicles on the road. Road accidents have been on the increase. um, a lot of young children have been moving out from government schools to low income private schools. So that again creates a hole in the pockets of people who come from low incomes. The air quality in Bangalore, especially November, December, Jan, is quite bad, and again that's going to affect the poorest of the poor. So these are some very important points which I think are important. But again, what I am saying is just from my worldview, from the representation I come from, and there are people who know about these subjects deeper and better.
Yeah, I agree. I think the city belongs to everybody, and I think it might be difficult to consider all kind all people from all backgrounds. But yes, I think there might be a group of people who are working on these problems, and a specific group of people who are I don't want to point at anybody, but who are responsible for the majority. So there is an imbalance that
Yeah.
needs to be addressed, is what I'm trying to get at. Moving on, let's talk about community work. This concept of solving local problems using local resources, which you talk about a lot, and also you've implemented through your work. Uh, this is a natural way of improving our surroundings, because we are
Mm.
in the problem and we understand it best. Uh,
Yeah.
what are some of the important aspects that lead to a successful community work or development?
So I'll keep it simple, Nitin. Like the audience I am in service of through ReBenefit is young people. So like one is just getting out there, Nitin. Like sometimes we rationalize too much, and we plan and we brainstorm. And brainstorm, the beauty of brainstorming is that it gives you delayed gratification. I mean, gives you instant gratification. You can think, you and I can right now talk about how to solve the garbage problem of the city, and after 1 hour the problem will not be solved, but both of us will feel very, very good. To solve local problems, you have to come out, you have to get your hands dirty, you have to talk to your neighbor, you have to talk to your local corporator, you have to talk to your assistant engineer in that area. That's one. So what is needed is coming out. What is needed is, I think, a lot of grit and perseverance. These are a problem of the commons, and in problem of the commons you will not have an instantaneous solution right then and there. You have to think about the stakeholders involved. You have to um, you might fix a garbage spot today, again the garbage spot might come tomorrow. You might petition to say improve sanitation in a government school. The government will sanction funds, beautiful toilets will get built, but then they will not be maintained. So these problems don't will not disappear in 1 day, 1 week, or 1 month. You have to have that grit, you need to have that perseverance, because they're the problem of the commons, and the problem of the commons, in a way, nobody owns it. And because nobody owns it, nobody comes out, and because nobody comes out, it becomes very, very difficult and wicked to solve. So so that is, like, I mean to say, it's as simple as that. Like, I think solving local problems is like playing a sport. You cannot learn about the sport, you cannot learn teamwork, you cannot have the joy of playing the sport unless you actually go out and play on the street or in the field or in the park or whatever. Yes, I mean to say, today you can play a sport on your computer as well, but I don't know if that's called a sport. So similarly, civic problem solving, citizen problem solving, public problem solving, whatever language you want to give, community problem solving, you have to go out there, and there is no substitute for that. You have to engage with your neighbor, with your elected representative, with your ward council. You have to roll up your sleeves. You'll have to try to fix issues. They will not get solved. You'll have to follow up, and that muscle will have to be built. But at a technical level, I feel three things are needed. Local data. In Bangalore, it's very cool to talk about big data and things like this, but the small data is beautiful. So how can we get local data, understand the local data, and utilize the local data to solve local issues? Second is local solutions. Again, we all talk about big solutions, one size fits all solution. How can we develop local solutions, and how can people build on these local solutions? So how can somebody in Bangalore build something, and somebody in Shimoga or somebody in Vishakhapatnam or somebody in Patna learn, but also that person can add back saying, you know what, in my setup, this has not worked and this is a new thing I'm trying. So second is the local solution, and third is the local community. I mean to say, you need to have the local community involved. That's when it gets credibility, and once things get credibility, be it elected representatives or the system, they start responding to you. So yeah, I mean, it's a it's yeah, it's a social science. It's not a science. And the more we realize that, the faster we will be in trying to build this movement.
Uh, yeah, and you've put that action right after you graduated, and that's how you started ReBenefit, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah,
So, can you talk about how you started ReBenefit,
yeah,
and
yeah,
what ReBenefit is currently working on, and
yeah,
about its impact so far?
yeah. So, so, so Nitin, like it goes back to our common first love, city of Bangalore. So as a child, I studied in a fantastic school, and the school always made us realize the importance of doing stuff, rather than talking and things like this. From school I moved into college. In college, everybody spoke about issues, nobody solved. So after college, I realized, I love the city. I was involved in a lot of doing stuff. Let me try to do something for the city. I did not think of an organization or anything like this. After college, I started collecting garbage from 150 households near Banargata region. And my friend and I, we would collect garbage every single day, take it into a piece of land, do secondary segregation, understand what works. And I had three realizations. One was that like you cannot have a technical solution necessary to fix a human problem. These are behavioral problems. Second, I realized was like citizens are not seen as important stakeholders in solving problems. That was the second learning I had. And the third learning I had was like citizens are very very cynical. Elderly people are very very cynical. This will not work, that will not work. So that's when I met another Bangalorean, who lives in a 100-year-old house, who shared the same passion like I did, and we both got together. And we asked ourselves, okay, how do we go about solving? So one is the vertical approach, we focus on waste or water or sanitation, but we said no, we'll focus on a horizontal approach. How do we build a cadre of young people whom we call as solve ninjas, to solve local issues using local data, local solutions, and local community? But obviously, when you tell people, when you tell the society, I'm getting young people to solve problems, they think, okay, chalo, this is one small exhibition, or a cute project a young person is doing. But we wanted to make this a lifestyle. We wanted this to be a habit. We wanted to bring deep behavioral change, so that when these young people continuously solve problems in their homes and their communities, tomorrow when they become bureaucrats, politicians, entrepreneurs, engineers, doctors, journalists, artists, they go with that bent of mind. And we were very clear that we wanted to be what one of my friend calls his organization as a do tank rather than a think tank. So that's how ReBenefit started. We said we'll work with young people. They're not cynical. They have high adoption to technology. We said we'll want to solve small and dent big, because we believed in the power of solving small, or else we want to have this big policy change, big product, big solution. But how do we build this culture of solving small and denting big? And then we realized that this is going out and solving up the problem, is not as easy as it looks. It requires unique skills, it requires grit, it requires community collaboration, it requires applied empathy, it requires you to be entrepreneurial. So we said, oh, this is great. In the short term, we are getting young people to solve problems which has a tangible impact. So we have diverted roughly about 400 tons of solid waste, probably saved about 4 million liters of water. These young people have invested about 500,000 hours in citizen problem solving, crowdsourced about 100,000 data points, crowd created about 300 400 local solutions. So a lot of things started happening, and we realized, okay, in the short term we are getting the problem solved in some cases, but we are building what the world calls 21st century skills. And in the long term, we are developing these amazing civic leaders, civic innovations, and creating a community of citizen problem solvers who can spread this ability to solve rather than talk. So yeah, that's how the journey started. We have worked with approximately 45,000 young people over 7 years. It started off in Bangalore. We did some experiments in Hubli. We also have presence in Chennai, but now we are partnering with organizations in Punjab, in Bihar, in Odisha, and yeah, places like that.
Uh, have you thought about the long-term outcomes? Because the same kids will grow up and advocate good practices, like you talked about. So eventually, more citizens will be more conscious uh, about the impact their small actions can create. So, have you thought about the long-term outcomes and how far away are we from realizing it?
Nitin, I like long term outcome. I don't think one ReBenefit can solve the issue. But like I said, right, like we have three long term outcomes. One is building a cadre of young people who can solve the issue. So just being conscious about something or just being aware about something does not necessarily mean that we will work towards it. Doing has a lot of friction and inertia. So we want to create, or we want to reach a tipping point of young people who know that they can solve an issue. And once or twice you solve, then you feel more confident. The second thing, long term goal we have, Nitin, is to impact the third tier of governance, which is corporator, councillor, panchayat person. So we want to create these grassroots leaders and grassroots tools which amplify and strengthen the third tier of governance, those the 73rd and the 74th amendment in the Indian constitution. And the third is hyper local impact when it comes to climate change at a local level. So how do you start building climate resilient neighborhoods and cities? So this is the long term goal. So we would be very happy if we influence municipal elections, if we impact the 73rd and the 74th amendment of the Indian constitution through the cadre of leaders and tools, as well as impact around climate change at a local level.
Yeah, I completely agree with the action part. I think the most amazing thing that Reap Benefit is doing is not just educating the youth, but doing it through practice and innovation. I remember studying at school where we were we read about these issues, and maybe once or twice we would put it into action. But I think the scale at which Reap Benefit is doing this is really nice. Uh,
Thank you.
so you talked about the data aspect of as one of the challenges or one of the important aspects. Suppose there are many local organizations in different localities around the city. How do you think connecting them through providing the data, like you mentioned, how do you think that
Hmm.
will help them? Is it about sharing the ideas? I think you talked about this, and resources. So can you talk about
Yeah.
how the data can help uh, other localities?
Yeah. So one thing, Nitin, we have as an organization, we have decided that we don't want to scale the organization, but we want to scale the idea or the mission. So keeping that spirit in mind, we are doing three things. One is building communities of young people, so wherein they work independently of a ReBenefit. ReBenefit will be one of the many resources they can take help from. The second thing what we are doing is we are building what today people call as civic technology. So we have built a WhatsApp chat bot. We have been testing that. We have got about 20,000 users. We had built an app which had about 8,000 users, and now we have built a web app. So the idea is to become a platform which integrates the community and communities and the local government. So which or in Hindi we can say integrating the Samaj and the Sarkar. And the idea here is to create a platform of people who can share their knowledge of how they have solved, can share their ideas of how they have campaigned, can share the tools of what they have implemented, but also share local data, saying, my air quality is like this, what's happening there, how many ward committee meetings have happened. So The idea is to be this platform which connects the Samaj and the Sarkar around data, around solutions, and get people together. So yeah, that's how we are thinking about it. Does that answer your question, Nitin, though?
Yes.
Yeah,
You mentioned the Solve Ninja, and you just talked about the platform that you've
yeah,
created. Uh, can
yeah,
you talk about the steps or the process
sure,
involved, and who is Solve Ninja for who? How can
sure,
people express their interest through Solve Ninja?
sure, 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 sure. Got it, got it. So one is our platform uses what a framework we call it as DISS, discover. So how do you get more and more people to discover and report issues? Second is investigate. Reporting is not enough. You investigate. You can collect qualitative, quantitative data. Based on that, you solve. You can solve it through a campaign, or you can solve it through solutions. And then finally, you share. You share if you have succeeded. You share if you have failed. We started off with the native app. We had about 7,000 users, about 11,000 issues reported, about 3,000 local campaigns, roughly about 1,000 odd local solutions, and yeah, about 100,000 interaction points. But we very quickly realized that um, an app is not the solution to the problem. An app is an amplifier. We'll have to build communities. So we started focusing more on the communities. And we also wanted to be as inclusive as possible. The app was for a certain type of audience in the city, which had by nature a little more agency. So we then started looking at chatbot. So we have something called as a Sol Ninja chatbot, which is a very unique way wherein we help people. So when people reach out to us and say, hey, we want to solve this issue, help us, we say that you have to solve it, we'll only help you like a running mate. And the problem will not necessarily get solved. So we have a chatbot wherein we have some behavioral nudging which happens. We have mentors who guide people what to do. We have the community participating in that. Then we have the web app. In the web app, like I said, you can report an issue, you can follow up on an issue, you can campaign, you can join campaigns, you can share your product idea, you can implement a product idea, and you can look for local data in the community. So that's how we are using technology. Now, how do we want to get more people onboarded? There are three approaches we have, Nitin. One is, like, of course, we call it as direct model, wherein we go and work with people. It's very important for us to have our skin in the game, or else we'll be advising people and not knowing how to implement it ourselves. The second is through partnerships, government partnerships, civil society organization, welfare association, and finally is through technology. The idea behind Sol Ninja is that it becomes a movement, and it does not belong to one organization, which is ReBenefit. So yeah.
Can you talk about the business model of ReBenefit, and how you manage the funds? Uh,
Yeah.
is it difficult to it is difficult because you mentioned that what you're doing is taking time, and it's not like a startup that gets millions of dollars of funds. So can you talk about
Right.
the difficulty surrounding the finance of your
Yeah.
organization?
Yeah. Yeah. So we are a we call ourselves as a not-for-profit business, or a social enterprise. So we are registered as a trust and a Section 8 not-for-profit company. 20 to 30% of our budgets, we generate revenues. So what do I mean by generate revenues? So if we work in certain communities on the ground, and if they have the ability to pay, we charge a payment for that. We also have built some local solutions ourselves, like an organic enzyme to convert food waste into compost, uh, a waterless urinal, a low cost air pollution monitoring system. So once we build the prototypes, and if it reaches production level, then we hand it over to other entrepreneurs and take some royalty on that. So that's about 20 to 30% of our income comes from that, and the rest 70% comes from philanthropy, corporate social responsibility, and supporters. So Rohini Nilekani Philanthropies has been one of our biggest supporters. Um, We have had philanthropists like Kalyan Banerjee, Meekan Maheshwari, Hema Hatangadi, who have supported us, and then also like CSRs like Salesforce Foundation, Godrej India, PricewaterhouseCoopers Foundation, and things like that. So it's a combination of old school revenue generation and philanthropy as well.
Uh, Talking about the people who make ReBenefit possible, can you talk about how, since Bangalore is quite diverse, I'm assuming
Mm,
there are people who bring
mm, mm,
solutions from different perspectives. Can you
mm.
talk about how you uh, attract talent and retain them, and how that has changed, since starting ReBenefit?
So yeah, Nitin, depends how we how we define talent. Um, yeah, the not-for-profit space is a very exciting space. The development sector, the social sector, whatever is the terminology you want to give it, and a lot of people have been transitioning. Young people joining in the last 10 years. There's been a very strong uh, concrete movement towards that. Yeah, so there is talent coming. Of course, what the talent is looking for is slightly different. Some of them are looking, are figuring out their purpose in their life. Some of them really want to do something on the ground and learn. So it's quite disaggregated, the type of people. Of course, at least salaries are also getting much better in the social sector and the development sector, but that cannot be the only reason why somebody would join the not-for-profit sector. But what I have learned, Nitin, in my limited experience, is that even a lot of not-for-profits, even a lot of uh, at least city-based not-for-profits, which I know, while they want to work with people from low-income communities, underserved communities, unfortunately, they don't have that type of representation within their own teams, and sometimes I think that is quite elitist, and depicts a certain type of power structures even in the not-for-profit sector. That, hey, I will work with a student or a young person from an underserved community. I'll build their skills or whatever. But when you look at the team composition, you will not find that kind of diversity in their team. And one thing I think what ReBenefit has done very well, we have been very bad in managing certain team members, and it's been a part of our learning curve, is that ReBenefit does not look into universities, grades, scores, pedigree. All these things are important, and not taking anything away from people's hard work. But at ReBenefit, we have found people who come from tier 2 towns, three towns, have the hunger to do good work, understand the needs of community very well. And just because they cannot speak English, sometimes the world thinks that, they don't have the talent. So I think there is great talent available uh, in cities. Probably we'll have to redefine what talent means, and talent is just not necessarily somebody speaking very articulately in English, or somebody having great coding skills. There is something more than that: connecting with people, uh, trying to tackle some tough problems, working with elected representatives, um, mining secondary data, building tools or products which go out in the market and which will get destroyed immediately because it's out in the commons. And you need a different muscle for that, people who are gritty. And I have seen talent like that in ReBenefit, and I'm very glad that I work with those type of people. So yeah, so in ReBenefit, our definition of talent is slightly different. um, and that talent is available in our setup.
Uh, can you talk about how you're scaling up this platform to other parts of the country, and where you are in that process?
Uh, so, uh, so, um, so Nitin, like, yeah, scaling up. Also, we are realizing that these type of platforms take time, right? Like look at the platforms people are used to. Like you you book a movie ticket, the ticket comes, like you immediately get it. You feel like eating Mexican or pizza today. You have to go onto an app and get it. So there is so much instant gratification. that the platforms most people in the not-for-profit sector build are all delayed gratification, and therefore our scaling will take time. Having said that, our chatbot has had 20,000 users. We have a reputation of roughly 30 to 40% of the times. There's a pretty good recall. So the way we want to scale is organic and inorganic, Nitin. So the organic is, like I said, through partnerships, civil society organizations, communities, and the government, because that will give us scale in number in terms of people. But inorganically, we want like people just to come on, like how people come to Kickstarter, or how people used the platform Waze in US and things like that. So one is organic methodology through partnerships and direct services, and one is launching our platform to the community, to people in general, so that they can jump in and they don't have to go through some bureaucracy or a bottleneck.
Uh, can you talk about how your journey through working and starting ReBenefit uh, how has that changed you, and what have you learned? What are some lessons that you've learned?
So one I've learned, Nitin, is to be less arrogant. We all study in colleges, and we come out and we think we can change the world. The beauty is, uh, change will happen at the pace you want. The change will happen at its own pace. So like, yeah, it just made me more humble. I listen more than I speak. Yeah, like when I look back, I think I was very arrogant, and there was a need to be fast in everything. The second thing is, no one organization or one person can solve any social problem in the world. If you think one leader, if you think one not for profit, if you think one company is going to solve all the problems, not going to happen. Even Elon Musk from Tesla says he cannot solve the problems of the world himself, if we think he's one of the most genius entrepreneurs. And the truth is, we'll need more and more people to come out, and I have learned that the hard way. The third is, young people in our country are remarkable. We really have to stop being tokenistic. We really have to stop thinking that young people can do a certain project. We have to give them agency. Actually, we are nobody even to give them agency. I have worked with some remarkable young girls, boys, and just like, I'm amazed at the way they think, the way they perceive things. I have learned that. And fourth, like, yeah, like as an entrepreneur, I have realized that, like, um, ultimately it's all about people. If earlier I was all about work, impact, but yeah, like if people are not getting joy in the work, then there is no way of moving forward. So yeah, these are the 3 4 things. And then I mean to say, there are enough YouTube videos and Twitter threads on what entrepreneurs learn about embracing failure and being vulnerable. And so I don't want to repeat those things, but these have been my 4 learnings, and which make me very bullish and optimistic, yeah, of where we are heading towards, at least from young people point of view. Of course, there are lots of things to be cynical and sad about, but these are the 4 things I have learned as an entrepreneur. And like few other things as an entrepreneur is, it's okay not knowing everything. You don't have to have an answer for everything. It is okay to change your mind. You're always understanding what's happening on the ground. And earlier, I would feel, that's kind of unacceptable, to kind of change your mind, or things like that. And yeah, it's like okay to like, it's okay to fail big. We are trying to solve some uh, big issues, so that's fine. Yeah, so these are the learnings I've had as an entrepreneur.
Uh, I have some questions that I ask all of my guests. So I want to
Mm.
start by asking, what are you currently working on at the ReBenefit and also in your life?
So in ReBenefit, right now, the most exciting thing, 3 things are exciting me the most. One is our chatbot going to different parts of the country in multiple languages, and a lot of elected representatives and citizens wanting that. So that's very, very exciting. Um, my colleague Gautam Raj and Gautam Prakash are working on that. The other thing I'm quite excited about is trying to build a social credit mechanism wherein if young people have solved issues, can we tell them what skills they have built, so that that helps them in the long term. And finally, like now we are incubating a few ideas of young people, so that we can share our learnings from the journey, so provide them some funding, financial support, some knowledge support. So these are the three most exciting things. Myself, I've been running quite consistently. So yeah, that I'm feeling good about that. Getting back to reading. So these are the two things. Uh, I am kind of enjoying.
Uh, Speaking of reading, what are some books that uh, bring value to you? Can you recommend
Nothing
some?
in particular. Nothing in particular, Nitin. Of late, I've been reading "Be Water" by Shannon Lee, Bruce Lee's daughter. She talks about Bruce Lee's life and his belief that how one should be like water. Uh, to be very honest, I've never been like a avid reader. Again, depends. Like some people think I read quite a bit. People at my home might think I don't read a lot. So depends. But the focus areas of my reading are generally behavior science, nudge, think fast, think slow. These are the kind of books I've read, really liked it. And nudging is a very important concept of our work. Reading a little more on public policy, around democracy, around political science. So that's another type of reading. And then, I mean, to say just anything like recently, one of our uh, youth board members, Shriya Shankar, asked me to read Andrea Agassi's autobiography. So probably I would read that next.
Uh, you mentioned few values during our talk,
Hmm.
empathy and taking ownership and putting in work. Can you talk about some values in life that you think are important?
Oof. Values in life. I don't know if they're values or traits. So one can take it however you want to take it. Like one trait I have seen is just like being perseverant. Like the best people I have met are just perseverant at it, figuring out different ways to do it. Second is like one of my mentors had once told me, your curiosity should trump your criticality. Like curiosity is so underrated, and like we're just even afraid to ask questions. So another trait would be curiosity. And yeah, just like, yeah, don't take yourself too seriously. Like, just if you take your work seriously but not yourself seriously. So these are some general principles. Yeah, but Nitin, every second self-help book will tell you this. And again, I like, you'll find hundreds of Twitter threads around this, but these are the three things I have kind of appreciated and learned from others. And hopefully, yeah, I have some of it. That's what I hope.
Uh, yeah, I, yeah. These some values can be quite basic and simple, but I think it's always good to talk about them and remind ourselves about it. So that's why I usually ask this
True.
question. Uh,
True.
Finally, where can people find out more about you and your work, and how can they connect to you online?
Right. So one is, you can go to our website www.reapbenefit.org. So that's our website. We are on Twitter, ReBenefit. We are on Instagram. We are on Facebook. We are on LinkedIn. So you can obviously reach out there. We will probably uh, share. We are testing our web app, so that should be done by the end of this month, hopefully, and that will be out public. But if people just want to have a look, it's app.solninja.org. That's the web app. Yeah, so these are the ways in which you can get in touch with us.
Kuldeep, thank you and your team for supporting society and young people and actively working on improving the lives of many through innovation and unique ideas. I think Reap Benefit is quite unique, and I feel we are yet to see the true scale of its impact. maybe direct or indirect. Uh,
Mm.
and this was really interesting conversation. So thank you so much for taking time to speak with me.
Thank you, Nitin. Thanks a lot.